I want you to imagine a fully loaded cargo train, stretching from Lisbon all the way to Moscow. This is roughly how much material the Allies stockpiled in southern England before shipping it across the Channel to liberate Europe in World War II. The events on the beaches of Normandy are well known, but they tend to overshadow the extraordinary engineering and logistical planning that made the invasion possible. From the creation of a fake inflatable army to the ingenious tanks modified to float, clear mines, and even lay bridges. And how some planners even suggested digging tunnels or pulling the assault beaches to France, already assaulted. This is the story of how the Allies planned the most ambitious and complex military operation in history. This is the story of the preparation of D-Day. In 1944, under the cover of darkness, two British soldiers move towards a heavily guarded beach on the French coast. They are on a dangerous mission to collect sand samples and bring them back to England. The sand will be tested to determine whether the French beaches can support the weight of armored vehicles. These vehicles would be used in the largest amphibious invasion in history, an invasion meant to begin the liberation of Europe. But standing in the way was the Germans' Atlantic Wall, a vast network of coastal defenses along the coast of Western Europe. This enormous building project is estimated to cost $200 billion in today's money, equivalent to about 130 Burj Khalifas. Breaking through it would be a central challenge of the invasion, and where the Allies choose to land would determine whether the challenge was survivable. Some sections of the defense were stronger, better supplied, and easier to reinforce than others. Normandy was the obvious choice, being within fighter range and shielded from the rough Atlantic Sea. The beaches were also close to the port Cherbourg, which the Allies planned to pin down and capture in the early phases of the invasion. But the Allies were to ensure that the Germans would not increase troop presence in Normandy, and to do so by promoting appearances that the Allies would attack in other locations. Operation Fortitude included Fortitude North, a misinformation campaign using fake radio traffic to lead the Germans into expecting an attack on Norway, and Fortitude South, a major deception designed to fool the Germans into believing that the landings would take place at Pas-de-Calais, the most obvious location for an invasion, where the English Channel is at its narrowest. To make the location more credible, a fictitious first US Army group was invented, supposedly located in Kent and Sussex. The Allies constructed inflatable tanks, trucks and landing crafts, and positioned them in open fields near the coast to make them easy to spot by German planes. Several military units moved into the area to bolster the illusion that a large force was gathering there. The idea of inflatable military equipment was inspired by the New York's long tradition of Thanksgiving Day parades, where enormous balloons of famous characters are pulled along Fifth Avenue. The well-established rubber company Goodyear was tasked with producing an entire fake army. To further convince the Germans of the existence of a ghost army, the famous general George S. Patton was being photographed in the southeast of England. He was the general the Axis feared the most, and just the man the Germans expected to lead the invasion. But Patton turned out to be just a decoy, and he played his role perfectly. Meanwhile in the West, the Allies' real army was in preparation, an operation where the logistical scale is difficult to grasp. The US Navy took 1.5 million American troops to Britain. The country's existing infrastructure was inadequate to support the massive effort, so 1,000 locomotives and 20,000 freight cars were shipped from the United States, plus material for additional rail lines. Estimates suggest that more than 16 million tons of supplies were gathered for the campaign leading up to and following the invasion.
We were never told the purpose of all the equipment, but we knew something enormous was coming. Fields upon fields were filled with tanks, jerry cans, bombs and ammunition. It was dumped everywhere with little guarding but carefully dispersed so that a single air raid couldn't destroy too much at once. At least the cows didn't seem to mind, but it was a wonder the island didn't sink under the weight.
British officers estimated that petrol and oil would account for more than 60% of the weight of the supplies required for the invasion. The estimated number of jerrycans prepared is said to have been 14 million. Stacked side by side, they would form a line stretching from London to Rome and back again. Because the fuel had to be transported by ships, there were serious concerns about guaranteeing a steady supply for the invasion force. The solution was to pump fuel through a specially designed pipeline laid beneath the English Channel between Britain and France. To install the pipeline across the channel, the British developed massive floating steel spools called conundrums. Towed by ships and slowly rotated, they unspooled the pipe directly onto the seabed. This made it possible to safely fuel the tanks in France all the way from Liverpool. To minimize the risk of attacks on the pumping stations, they were carefully disguised as barn, garages, and even as an ice cream shop. After the invasion of Normandy, British sappers were forced to lay a staggering 20 kilometers of pipeline per day in order to keep pace with the advancing forces pushing eastwards. The Allies already knew how difficult it was to land vehicles and troops during an amphibious invasion and to break through the German coastal defenses. Some absurd ideas suggested towing over the assault beaches already assaulted, or to dig a tunnel under the channel. But these ideas were unrealistic, and the Allies failed to come up with any better alternative than a naval assault force, the largest and most complex in history. Planners prepared detailed loading plans using blueprints of decks and cargo holds spread across enormous tables. Wooden blocks, scaled to represent every jeep, cannon, and shipping container, were pushed around like chess pieces to ensure everything would fit. The Allies would somehow manage to get 7,000 different kinds of combat necessities onto the beaches during the first hours of the invasion. This would be everything from surgical scissors to grenades. The soldiers storming the beaches were absolutely loaded down with equipment.
Our equipment was soaked and unbearably heavy, so much so that running on the beaches was nearly impossible. There was no way of knowing when we would be resupplied, so we were overloaded with ammunition and rations. Our helmets were painted with a cork-like texture to prevent them from becoming shiny in seawater. Our uniforms also carried a special patch that would change color if we were exposed to gas. I never really understood how it worked. In the end, the gas masks proved unnecessary. The Germans never used chemical weapons, so for most of us, they became nothing more than a dry place to store cigarettes.
This is a simplified diagram showing a typical naval attack force. Minesweepers had cleared a safe path in the hours before the invasion. The first vehicles to reach the beach were a formation of 20 duplex-drive Sherman tanks, amphibious tanks capable of floating. These belonged to a special series of modified Shermans and Churchills developed for the invasion. These unusual vehicles were named the Funnies for their odd appearances. The Sherman duplex drive weighed about 35 tons and floated by displacing the air around it. A large canvas screen was bolted and sealed to the sides of the tank to prevent it from leaking. The screen was held upright by inflatable tubes. For obvious reasons, the crew preferred to stand on deck when the tank was afloat, except from the driver, who had to remain inside and struggle out through the hatch if the tank began to sink. Propulsion was provided by 2 propellers, each driven by one of the tank's tracks. The tanks were transported in landing crafts until they were close to the shore. Exiting the landing craft was particularly dangerous. Brushing against the side of the vessel could tear the canvas screen, rendering the tank completely useless. But what made the design extraordinary was that the tank was fully sealed at sea, giving the illusion of being a harmless canvas boat. Only once it reached shore did the screen collapse, instantly transforming it back into an ordinary tank. Another special vehicle was the bobbin. This tank carried a massive roll of matting designed to create a temporary roadway over the beaches, which were often covered in blue clay, an extremely difficult surface to drive on. As the tank advanced, the matting was unwound in front of it, laid beneath its tracks, and stretched out behind, forming a stable path to vehicles to follow. One of the most successful designs of the entire campaign was the tank capable of deploying an assault bridge. The bridge was carried on the front of the vehicle and could be dropped in just 30 seconds, spanning a 30-foot gap and supporting vehicles weighing up to 40 tons. An alternative version was the Ark, a turretless Churchill tank fitted with extendable ramps at both ends. Other vehicles could drive up the ramp and over the tank itself, effectively using it as a mobile bridge across obstacles. Another highly effective design was the Sherman Crab, a mine-clearing tank equipped with a rotating drum of weighted chains that detonated mines ahead of it. However, the crates created by the explosions sometimes made the terrain even more difficult to cross. To address this, engineers developed the bull's horn plow, which dug into the ground to expose and push mines aside instead of detonating them. The double onion tank was designed to demolish bunkers. It placed explosive charges against the enemy walls, then reversed to a safe distance while trailing an electrical detonation cable, which the driver used to trigger the blast. The initial wave of duplex drive Shermans was covered by smokescreens, followed by a wave of 9 landing craft tanks, or LCTs. These carried the remaining Funnies, as well as conventional battle tanks. Behind them came waves of infantry aboard 10 iconic Higgins boats. These troops were supported by landing craft rockets, which cleared beach obstacles, and landing craft flags, which targeted German planes. Allied destroyers covered the flanks, while self-propelled artillery aboard LCTs fired on shore positions. The entire assault formation unfolded over approximately 20 minutes. The initial landing was then reinforced by a second wave of 40 assault landing crafts and 22 infantry landing crafts, followed by a final wave of 20 landing craft tanks carrying soft vehicles. After the initial invasion, the Allies needed a way of rapidly unload enormous amounts of troops, vehicles, fuel, and supplies onto the beaches of Normandy, without relying on capturing a major port, which they knew would be heavily defended or destroyed. The solution was to bring the ports with them. 2 prefabricated harbours, constructed in England, were towed across the channel to the beaches of Normandy. Positioned far enough offshore, they could be accessed by large ships. From there, prefabricated floating girder bridges connected the harbours to the beach. These bridges were designed to rise and fall with Normandy's extreme tidal range, allowing the ports to operate any time of the day. Before deploying the harbours, the Allies conducted 6 dangerous nighttime missions to get the necessary topology information of the seabeds by using echo sounders. The locations surveyed were Omaha Beach for the American port and Gold Beach for the British and Canadian port. In order to unload troops, vehicles, and supplies, the harbours needed protection from the strong waves and rough seas. Massive hollow concrete blocks, known as phoenixes, were pulled across the channel and then sunk to sit on the seabed as a solid sea wall. Lines of old warships were also deliberately sunk for additional protection. The crews on board these ships often didn't know that their ship was on a one-way trip before the charges were set off. The significance of Operation Overlord ensures that it is one of the most remembered campaigns in history. It is truly remarkable that 15 different countries were able to coordinate such a vast and complex amphibious invasion, despite differences in language, culture, and equipment. If you enjoyed this video, I would recommend you to check out my other World War II related video on Operation Gunnerside.